1 year and 29 days, I worked at one of the most popular casual dining restaurants in the United States. It's a very popular chain, and I worked at the busiest location in my state. At least that's what everybody said. This specific restaurant even operated as a training location for the chain. The stuff that happened behind the scenes at that restaurant was insane, and restaurants in general. And literally no one talks about it. I assume because they don't want to lose their jobs. And now that I've finally left, I am beyond ready to expose that restaurant for their trifling ways. There's a lot to get into, and I did make a script because I didn't want to forget anything. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. There's an expression that says you cannot make this stuff up. I couldn't have made this stuff up if I tried. I'm just not creative like that. My purpose for making this video is to share with you my experiences working at a training location of one of the most popular casual dining restaurants in the United States. In this video, we're gonna call this restaurant Yeehaw Steakhouse. In this video, I'm gonna be telling you some of the many reasons why I actively discourage people from eating at this restaurant and from working at this restaurant. And I also do want to start this video out with a trigger warning. This video is going to briefly discuss some very serious topics like passing and choking. I do want to start off with some context and some background about the job itself, because I do think that having this information helps to color the crazy stories that I'm going to tell. So I definitely encourage you to listen to this part, but if you don't want to, it's okay. Just go ahead and skip to this timestamp right here where I will jump into some crazy stories. All right, so like right here, I'm going to start off by showing you a general layout of this restaurant, okay? So if you're assigned to be a server in the 500s, 100s, or 300s, you're going to be in the party section that night. So you're likely to have a lot more guests than servers who are in the other sections of the restaurant that night. Also, another important thing to remember about this map are these doors that I put a door on either side. In regards to the kitchen, there were 2 doors to get into the kitchen. There was an indoor and an outdoor. You were only supposed to go through the indoor when you were coming into the kitchen, and you were only supposed to leave out the kitchen by using the outdoor. Now let's talk about a typical shift at Yeehaw Steakhouse. Essentially, everything is timed, okay? When I say everything was timed, I mean everything. And you soon realize that seemingly everything is working against you as you try to stick to those times. I'm gonna explain. So when a guest comes and sits down at a table in your section, you have less than 1 minute to greet them and to tell them the specific script items that you have to share with them. So you're gonna tell them your name, you're gonna ask them if they've been here before, you're gonna recommend at least 2 appetizers, and you're gonna take their drink order. Make sure to also recommend at least 2 drinks. Realistically, you couldn't always greet your tables within 1 minute of them sitting down, because sometimes, say you would come in for the evening shift at 5 p.m. or so, and there's a line out the door. As soon as you clock in, your section is going to be full. All your tables are going to be full. All your guests are going to be sitting down at the exact same time in the different tables that they're at in your section, and you have to try to get to them and greet them and do your whole little spiel. Do that as quickly as possible, get all their orders and things, and then jump to the next table. So it wasn't always actually possible to greet them within 1 minute, but you do your best. At this particular restaurant and at this particular chain, they schedule so many servers on the floor at any given time. A lot of the time, I'm gonna be saying is like I still work there. I quit, by the way, at the beverage station when you were trying to get drinks. And you know, sometimes you would get there and there'd be a line, and the server who's there filling up her drinks, she has a large party. So say she's got a party of 15 guests and all of them ordered Coke Zeros. People love Coke Zero, and 5 of them also ordered waters. So that's 15 cups that she needs to get and fill with ice and fill with drinks and everything like that before she, you know, scoots out the way and the next server in line can go. So sometimes it was actually impossible to get the drinks back to the guests in the time that the company required you to, if that makes sense. Also, of course, if a guest orders alcohol, you can't just go get that at the beverage stand. You have to go to the bar. The bartenders, they're not only making drinks for the servers, they're making drinks for guests that are actually sitting at the bar, like they're guests. And then you're gonna serve your salads, you're gonna serve your appetizers, you're gonna serve the meals all within the specific amount of times, or at least do the best you can, because obviously we don't cook the food. So after you give the food to your guests, you gotta wait like wait for them to take a bite, and come back after 2 minutes of them like eating, so you can make sure that everything was cooked to their liking, or if you need to take it back and have it recooked or upcooked or whatever. Throughout their meal, you're gonna want to return a few times, remove as many plates, as many empty cups as you can. Then towards the end of the meal, ask them if they want to buy any gift cards. It was mandatory that we ask all our guests if they wanted to order gift cards. 99 out of 100 guests said no. Last but not least, you're gonna bring them their check, and you're gonna bring them any to-go items that they requested. To-go drinks, boxes. That's basically how to take care of your tables, right? So a server is not only taking care of their tables when they are working. While serving your tables and trying to keep up with that timeline and everything, the server also needs to keep up with their running side work. Running side work is basically a task that you are assigned to do that entire shift at any point that you get downtime. There were many different running side work assignments, and these were not made equal. Okay, so if you're assigned to glasses as your side work for the shift, it's your responsibility to ensure that all 9 glass racks at the beverage stations, that they're full, okay, that they're full of clean glasses. While another person might be on unsweet tea, and that's their side work. Like, that's all they have to do all night is make sure that the unsweet tea and the sweet tea are full. Yeah, that's something they need to like pay attention to, but of course that's not as physically demanding to do for 11 hours as the person who's on glasses. And then at the end of your shift, you get cut for the night, which means that you will no longer receive any new guests. Once you're cut, you no longer need to do your side work. Now it's time to complete your 3 other duties. Number 1, you're assigned back work. Number 2, clean your section. Number 3, polish your silverware, get it approved by the tough manager that's on duty, and then roll your silverware in the black napkins. All right, so those are the 3 things that you have to do before you can leave at the end of the night. Okay, so for the back work, this is a task that you need to complete in a specific way in order to basically reset that part of the restaurant for the next day's shift. Like the running side works, the back works are assigned randomly, and just like the side works, they are not built equal, like at all. For example, one person's back work at the end of the night was called soda 2 sugar drain, while another person's back work was drink trays. If you were assigned to soda 2 sugar and drain, this is what you need to do. Restock the entire beverage station number 2, which is adult to-go cups, kids to-go cups, adult lids, kids lids, straws, break down the soda fountains, wipe all that down, refill the big ice bin, refill the teas, remove the old tea grounds, and clean out the tea urns. Grab a bag of sugar from the bottom shelf, and then portion those sugars into smaller bags until the bag of sugar is empty. Lastly, you need to get on your knees and sweep the trash that has fallen below the beverage station. So that's everything that you have to do for your back work, if that's the back work that you're assigned that night. Meanwhile, the person who was assigned beverage trays, all they have to do is get a damp rag and wipe down like 20 plastic beverage trays and stick them at the top of the beverage station, and they're done. That's it. That's their back work. So I always found it just bizarre how one person would be assigned to do all of those things if they were on soda 2 sugars and drains, while another person, all they had to do was wipe down like 20 plastic trays. Now let's talk about cleaning your section. So to clean your section, you need to refill the salt, pepper, sugars, and stevias that were on your table. Wipe down the tables, booths, and chairs. Wipe down the menus and alcohol menu. Wipe down the ketchup bottles and the steak sauce bottles that were on the table. You're supposed to wipe outside the container and inside the container and inside the lids. And you need to restock any new condiments in case any of them are too low. Then you need to sweep under all of the tables and the surrounding walkways. We would legitimately be fighting each other like we were in the Hunger Games in order to get a broom at the end of the night. For at least 9 months out of the year that I worked there, there were only 2 adult-sized brooms for the servers to use. Next, you need to polish your silverware. So you were required to polish 36 forks and 36 knives, plus enough forks and knives to refill your section. So basically, if you were in a section where you had 10 guests that night, that means at the end of the night, you needed to polish 36 plus 10 is 46. So you need to polish 46 forks and 46 knives. So after you polish your silverware, you had to get it approved by a manager, where basically they look through all the silverware and make sure that it's, actually clean, because people were rolling dirty silverware. After you roll your silverware into the black cloth napkins, you're supposed to place all of it. It's like all stacked up. You're supposed to place it on the bench that's in the lobby of the restaurant. I refused to do that. I refused to put the silverware out there because I thought it was disgusting. The next day, that silverware was going to be given to guests. So I just found it absolutely unsanitary and disgusting to knowingly give guests napkins that had touched the bench that other guests' booties literally were on. So that's pretty much a general rundown of an average shift at Yeehaw Steakhouse. Now it's time to dive into some of the reasons why you should never eat or work there. Number one, cold-hearted managers. Most of the managers, I'm not going to say all of them, but several of the managers who were the managers over the servers, over the busboys, and over the hosts, several of those managers were very cold-hearted people. Some of the most cold-hearted people I've ever had to interact with in my life. And get this, they were not only cold-hearted to employees, they very much were, but they were also quite cold-hearted to guests. Number one example, guests losing their lives. During the time that I worked there for 1 year, there were multiple incidents of guests choking on food at the restaurant. One of them for sure passed away. And as for the other, I never got 100% confirmation that the gentleman passed away. There were rumors. I was actually present for that event, and to me, I don't know how he could possibly survive that, but it was a few months after I had started. A man had a medical emergency and he had started choking on his food. None of the managers attempted to do the Heimlich maneuver. This is fact. This is a fact. I literally witnessed this. So many other people witnessed this. 2 out of 3 of them did not know how to perform the Heimlich maneuver. I was literally told that by one of them. A server attempted to do the Heimlich maneuver. She was actually the guest server. She was the server for that section. She attempted to do the Heimlich maneuver for him. She did chest compressions. She even did mouth to mouth for the gentleman. But unfortunately, he was just still passed on the ground, just completely unresponsive. The EMTs came, and it was just insane. Servers were crying. Several of the high school busboys were literally just like shaken as to what they just seen. If that wasn't crazy enough, I just could not believe how it was all handled by the managers. So another server actually called the police and gave them our address and everything. I really remember one of the bussers, it was just really hard for him to see that. Obviously, nobody goes to work at a restaurant expecting that a guest is gonna, that's gonna happen to a guest. And it was just really heartbreaking. But the manager saw him just like standing there and was like, go clean tables. And somebody might say like, oh, well, maybe she was just being a good manager and she was looking out for him and was trying to help him to not be more traumatized by standing there and continuing to watch. But I don't know, I'm no manager or anything, but I think that a better thing to do is be like, ask him to maybe just step away and go get some air or something like that. Tell him if he needs some time to get himself together, he can, go do that. But to just like demand him to like get back to work was insane. People are just crying left and right, and the restaurant is still going strong. Okay, they didn't bar any new guests from coming in and sitting down and everything. And it was just a very weird, dark atmosphere. So the EMTs eventually came and they eventually took him away. They had him there for like a lot longer than I was expecting, but they eventually left, and the server who performed the Heimlich maneuver on him and everything, they ended up closing her section, and she went and she rolled silverware. So I don't know if that's something maybe she wanted to do to help her get her mind off of it. I'm not sure, but she stayed and she rolled silverware. At the end of the night, I literally overheard one of the managers talking about how when someone passes, all of their insides leak out onto the floor. I heard that. I heard it with my own ears. I just found the discussion to be so incredibly insensitive considering what had just happened to that poor gentleman. And I do want to add that I actually reported this incident to corporate. Yes, I did. Example number 2. a woman passed out in the restroom due to a health condition. So one night, a couple of ladies had come to the restaurant to eat. One of my coworker friends was their server. So apparently one of the friends was not happy with something about the meal. So she requested that the manager come over and talk to them. And I don't know about how she acted. I don't know about her attitude. Literally have no idea about that. Later in the evening, I was actually walking by the bathroom area and a woman ran out of the bathroom, ran up to me and was like, there's somebody passed out in the bathroom. And I was like, so then I started booking it around the restaurant, trying to find a manager, being like, somebody's passed out, telling all my coworkers, like, somebody's passed out in the bathroom. Did somebody call the EMTs? Somebody called the EMTs. Finally found my manager and she was handling it. So it turned out the lady that had passed out in the bathroom was the friend of the lady who complained to the manager that night. So the lady who passed out was not the lady who complained, it was her friend, okay? After the paramedics were called, I went to talk to my friend who was their server, and she was so angry, and I was like, are you okay? What's going on? Obviously besides the scene, you know, because it's not that she was actually sad, she was more angry. And I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, blank manager, one of the managers had said to her, God don't like ugly, insinuating that the lady who was having the medical emergency in the bathroom, just insinuating that she deserved it because her friend complained earlier in the night. And was carried out on a stretcher. Point number 3 is what I'm going to say because I have a bunch of examples underneath it. These managers spoke to us as though we were dogs. And I don't even think people should talk to dogs in the way that several of the managers talk to us. They would legitimately be talking to us cash crazy for no reason. It is like they just wanted a fight. It's just so much disrespect. I'll talk more about it later in the video, but the general manager, we didn't really interact with him that much, like us servers and the busboys and stuff. We didn't really interact with the general manager that much, but he told me himself that the managers spoke to the servers very disrespectfully, and that I was not the first person to say that. Basically that a lot of people have quit for that reason. A few examples of that I'll try and run through quickly, just of the way that they talked to us. There was this one manager, let's call her Samantha. Not too long after I started, I was serving this table of 2, and as their food had taken like abnormally long to come out. So they were nice about it, but I could tell, like, you know, they're like, we're hungry, where's our food? So their food finally came out. I brought them their food, and I asked them if I could get anything, any sauces or anything, and the lady asked if I could get her this like A1 or something. So I turned to go back in the kitchen to get the A1, and then, you know, so I could bring it back to her. And just a few seconds after I got into the kitchen, this busboy runs in and is telling me, Miriam, Samantha, the manager, wants to see you in your section, like right now. I was like, oh, okay. So I still grabbed the A1 and I brought it to her. I went over to Samantha, and basically she just started scolding me for not clearing another table before I went back into the kitchen, because basically right before I brought the food to that table, another one of my tables left. It was like another two-top or table of just 2 people, they had left. And so basically she had wanted me to, after the lady asked for the steak sauce, she didn't want me to go get the steak. She wanted me to turn around and go in the opposite direction, empty the previous table since that table had just gotten up, and then go back to the kitchen and put all those dishes down, then get the A1. That would have added several more minutes when I could just turn around, get the A1 sauce, bring it right back, and then clear the table. So basically the guest would have had to wait several minutes to get her steak sauce before she could start eating her food. I just didn't think that made sense. Like, I'm just like, aren't the guests supposed to be first? She's been waiting extra long for her steak, and it finally came, and she wants her steak sauce so she can go ahead and start eating. But my thinking was wrong, and she just chewed me out. She made the busboy stand right there and listened to me be scolded, and my table sitting there that I brought the sauce to, they overheard just how she was talking to me. And yeah, it was a lot, but I definitely never made that mistake again. The managers there, and even some of the servers, but mostly the managers, they loved to teach through humiliation and shame. This was a very common practice at Yeehaw Steakhouse. Another time I was at the POS, which is the computer screen system where, you know, servers, waiters, they type in your order and everything. So I was standing there typing in my order, and someone had left a drink tray there. I didn't leave it there. Somebody else left it there. It was already there. So I'm typing it in, and I finished typing it in, and I'm about to turn to go. And the manager who's standing there, he looks at me and says, take this tray stand back to the kitchen. In a nasty tone of voice, like a nasty tone of voice, because I'm telling you, y'all, if he would have said it in a nice way, like, hey, Miriam, do you mind taking this back since you're about to go back there? Wouldn't have been a problem. Would have been zero problems would have been had. 0. But it was because he said it in a nasty tone, and he had been nasty to me before, okay? I responded, I didn't leave it there. He responded, don't stand here and argue, take it back. I responded, do not speak to me like that. I did not leave it here, so I do not have to take it back. Who are you talking to like that? And for no good reason. I can do you a favor and take it back if you just be nice to me. It's not rocket science to be nice to people. Anyways, I noticed this table like of 6 people listening into this little back and forth thing, okay? But this was not the first time that he talked to me crazy. Side note, this was after I rejected his advances to be his Valentine. Mind you, he was a married father. A married father. Okay, so can't prove that me rejecting his advances had anything to do with it, but I think it's a little interesting side bit just to kind of emphasize some of the character of some of these managers, because not people of character. All right, so we're still under cold-hearted managers. I hope that you're still with me. And we're in category 4, I think, of examples. We're gonna call this managers punishing employees. All right, so let's start first with the server ranking chart. Basically, every sale of every type of item is tracked, and each week a ranking chart is posted in the kitchen that ranks the #1 server all the way down to the lowest ranking servers. So besides it feeling like that one episode of Malcolm in the Middle where the teacher was calling every student by their grade ranking.
Very nice. Number 12.
So each week, whichever manager created the schedule would intentionally overschedule the floor. This means that they would schedule more servers to the floor that there were actually room for on the floor. So if you were on the bottom 5 of that server ranking chart, you will show up to work the next weekend expecting to be a server because on the schedule it says that you're a server, but you'll get to the restaurant to find out that you were actually not going to be a server that night. You will either be running other servers' food to their table, so you just take the food from the kitchen and take it out to their table, come back and do it for the whole night, or you will be polishing / rolling silverware the entire night, replenishing the floor with silverware, because again, they refused to hire an actual person to do this, so they would just take a server with a low ranking number from the last week and make them have to roll silverware. Ultimately, you ended up losing out on hundreds of dollars that you were planning to make that night. So when this happened to me the first time, I was annoyed. Punishment is trifling because of course you want to try to upsell things that you can, but you can't force guests to add things to their order that they were not planning to add. You can suggest it, but if they don't want to, like, you know, you can't control exactly what your guests buy. This is editing Miriam here. Hello. I just want to go back and clear things up. I only ranked in the bottom 5 one time, literally one time. I just wanted to clear that up just so that people don't think that I was a bad server. I was actually a pretty good server, I would say. And a lot of my guests would tell me too that they had been to this chain many times and at different locations and also at our location, and that I was the best server that they had ever had. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I just want to make it known that I was not a bad server, okay? I only ranked in the bottom for sales one time. Okay, continue, thank you. So I was in the bottom 5. And so I remember that night I had to polish and roll silverware all night. And they actually had me rolling silverware with one of the little teenage hosts. Instead of him being a host that night, they made him roll silverware. And so it was him and I rolling silverware all night. So I was soaking and polishing the forks and knives like I did every night. As I told you earlier, we have to do silverware every night as servers. But so I was polishing it, I was soaking it in the water and really, like, you know, wiping it with like clean towels and stuff like that to get it as clean as I could. The little teeny bopper host was like, hey, this is the quickest way to polish the silverware. And he showed me how he was doing it. And he literally said, they don't have to look good. In other words, he was saying they don't have to be clean. He was just taking the fork and the knife, barely grazing it in order to polish it at all, and just rolled it in the silverware. So the silverware was like disgusting that he was rolling. One more side note, we only had to get our silverware approved by a manager at the end of the night when we were rolling as servers. If you were assigned to roll silverware all night during the dinner shift while guests were actively using the silverware and you were rolling the silverware and replenishing the floor, You did not have to get the manager to check it before you rolled it in the napkins and gave it to a guest to use. So that's how he, and I'm sure plenty of other people, were able to get away with intentionally giving guests dirty silverware in order to avoid being punished and losing out on money that you need. Servers figured out ways to rig the system in order to rank higher on the charts. Some of these ways were straight up unethical, in my opinion, and the managers absolutely supported it. So here's one example. In order for a guest to order a meal, the server must first ring in a drink. For every water rung in, it lowers the server on the ranking chart. So say 3 out of 4 of the adults at your table order water as their drink. You can cheat the system by never actually ringing those waters in as waters. You should ring the drinks in as a kid's Coke or a kid's Sprite or something like that, because water is not considered a real drink and it will lower you on the chart. But if you ring in something like a kid's drink, it pushes you higher up on the chart. I was ringing in waters for months before one of the managers had one of the top servers come and talk to me and give me some advice, I guess, so that my sales wouldn't be so sucky. And she literally told me to do that. Just stop ringing in waters. And this company is one of the top companies, and they're doing very well financially. I wonder why.
Interesting.
Another way that servers would rig the system so that they could be higher on the ranking chart. Many servers would ring in guests' orders slightly different than the way that the guest actually ordered it. So the combos are in one area of the POS and they have a certain price. You know, they're on the menu in the combo section of the menu. So if the guest orders a steak and shrimp combo, they're ordering it from the combo section of the menu, expecting to get that price. But a lot of servers would actually not ring it up as the combo. They would ring it up as a steak, and then they would bring in the shrimp as an add-on feature. This actually increased the overall price of the meal. Yeah, I found that rather unethical. It'd be one thing if they did that and it lowered the price for the guests, but it actually didn't. It actually increased the price, not like a crazy drastic amount. You know, so guests most of the time wouldn't notice, but I knew, okay? I knew. You know, I could clearly see they were ordering a combo. I would ring it in as a combo. But desperate times, man. Who wants to be on the bottom of the ranking chart? Like, people had kids to feed and servers relied on the money that they were going to make that night to pay their rent, to pay their bills and everything like that. And they would just show up and have to roll silverware all night and make no money as punishment for not ranking higher on the ranking chart. Like, another prime example of managers punishing servers. If a guest commits a dine dash, which basically means they come and they eat and they drink and they have themselves a merry old time, and then they steal the whole meal by running away and not paying for their food, a dine dash. If a guest commits a dine dash, their server gets written up, okay? So this actually happened to my coworker friend. She started working there a couple months before I did. Hard worker, reliable. So towards the end of the meal one night, her table asked her to bring them all to-go drinks. So she went back into the kitchen to like make them and get them. And when she came back to their table to bring it to them, they were gone. They intentionally asked her to bring them something from the kitchen, and when she came back, they were gone. So they stole everything. And the manager on duty told my friend, I'm gonna have to write you up. You should have taken better control of your table. So because the server's guests chose to run up their bill, eat everything, intentionally deceive the server by asking her to go get them some more drinks, and then steal the whole meal, the server got in trouble. The server. My question is, what could she have done differently? Was she supposed to not bring them what they asked for? Was she supposed to hunt for them in the dark parking lot and risk being injured to run out there and be like, you rotten table, come back here and pay for your food? What did she do wrong exactly? Right after that, she literally, in that moment, she checked out, and everything, like, that was her last straw. That was her final reason. And she put in her 2 weeks notice the very next day. and within the month she found a way better job, like higher paying. It's just black and white, and I'm really happy for her. So happy ending from that one. But
who's next?
Next punishment. There's so many, guys. Having our break privilege taken away. So like I mentioned earlier, the managers would randomly get angry about things. So I specifically remember this one time, a manager got so angry because she saw several people using the wrong doors. Remember the doors I talked about earlier, the indoor and the outdoor? She saw people going in the outdoor and coming out of the kitchen through the indoor. I know somebody watching this might be like, why can't you guys just use the right door? Yes, we can use the right door, but honestly, sometimes for efficiency's sake, it does not make sense to use the correct door. So if my section is the 300s and I need to get refills for 6 people in the 300s, and one of them has a drink in the bar, and I know that the bar is going to be crowded and it's literally so hard to walk through because it was poorly built in the first place. It's so hard to get through there, especially when there's people in there, and I'm holding 6 drinks and I need to get that bar drink. Why on earth would I go out the outdoor and have to go all the way around the restaurant when I could just get the drinks from the drink station, go out the indoor, and just be careful. And we literally had a way of doing this. You just had to be careful and always say coming out wrong. If you're coming out the wrong door, you have to say coming out wrong. Or if you're coming in the wrong door, you're gonna say coming in wrong. Just say it loud and proud and you're good to go. I never saw one collision when that happened. Side note, the managers literally use the wrong doors all of the time. All the time I witnessed this. So I'm like, why are you getting so angry at us for using the wrong door when you do it all the time? But anyways, that day she decided to get in a mood and was so angry, she decided to take away our break privilege. This meant that no server above the age of 18 was able to take a break that day. Mind you, most of the servers that day were volume. Volume means that we were scheduled to work a double shift. A double shift is literally, you get there at 11:15 a.m. because you need to get there a few minutes early to set up your section. You get to the restaurant at 11:15 in the morning and you leave after 11 p.m. That is pretty much 12 straight hours of you being there. And she wouldn't allow us to take a break. She wouldn't allow us to take a lunch break, which is supposed to be 30 minutes for them to close your section and you can go eat your lunch, or you can sit down in your car, or take, she refused. She took the break away. I do want to emphasize, we were still allowed to eat. We would just have to stand in the kitchen and like scarf down whatever snack or whatever food that we had, like in between serving our tables and doing all our side work and everything. We just, we couldn't like sit down and actually take a break on a 12-hour shift because she wanted to punish us because she saw a few people using the wrong door that morning. Another time I saw that same manager yelling at a server that she didn't like. She was literally degrading him in the kitchen, like with her words. And for several minutes, she was just going on and on and on, just yelling at him through like just a red face about him using the wrong door. So many people were using the wrong door that day, and she didn't say one thing to them. He was the only one that she decided to chew out because she didn't like him. I'm telling you, I saw her using the wrong door all the time. It was absolutely insane. I just felt really terribly for him, and his face was just all flushed and he was just really quiet. He was usually a pretty outgoing sort of person, but he was really quiet the rest of the night, and I asked him if he was okay and he didn't say anything. He was just like, actually, eventually he did finally quit, and I will say that he went out with a bang. That is all I will say. And he had every right because of how disrespectfully those managers spoke to him during his time there. And literally when he quit, one of the managers told him, I saw it. I literally heard her say that, "You'll be back. They always come back." What kind of manager says that? Just toxic. And like, how unprofessional can you be? He was not one of their favorites after all. And that's going to take us to our next section titled Favoritism. Favorites were consistently placed in the same sections of the restaurant. They were placed in the party sections. The least favorites were consistently, and I mean consistently, placed in the smaller sections and on double shifts too. So let me explain what I mean. So on a double shift, an almost 12-hour shift, one person would be assigned to be in a section where they had enough seats to have 16 guests at a time, while another server would be in a section that only allowed them to have up to 6 guests at a time. Both those servers are working for that 12-hour shift. Which server do you think is going to make more money that day? The server who has 10 more clients at a time than the other server. And the thing is, they would put the same servers in the same sections. This was actually so crazy. The manager that I mentioned earlier, Samantha, the one who ripped me to shreds. Samantha, at some point, I showed up to work. One day I showed up to work and she was serving. So she wasn't a manager anymore. She became a server. But so she actually stopped being a manager. She became a server. But she would still get, like, I don't know, some sort of favoritism treatment because she was placed in a section where she would have 16 guests at a time. And I tell you, every single Saturday without fail, she was in that section. Without fail. You might be thinking, well, the servers who are assigned to the party sections and the bigger sections, they must be doing better in sales and be higher on the ranking chart, right?
Well, think again!
If that were true, then this whole process would be a little more fair, like it would make more sense, but it was not the case. It just wasn't the case. I remember at least 2 servers, they were not favorites, and actually they were literally both bullied by other servers. They both ranked highly on the ranking chart, but I remember one of them was consistently put in that 6 guest section, the guest where she can only have 6 guests at a time. She was consistently there. Every single shift I was there, she was in that section without fail, even though she did really well and she would upsell. I remember this one Saturday that I came to work. There was a new manager who didn't know yet. He did not yet know about the culture of favoritism at Yeehaw Steakhouse. He created the floor plan for that day. And a certain server who was always put in the 500 sections was not in the 500 section. She freaked out. She convinced another server to switch places with her. Because that just goes to show that she was literally always put there and they didn't really give other servers an opportunity to go over to the 500s and make money. And I remember one of the few times that I was placed in the party section, I made the most money that day I had ever made at a shift there, ever. Reason number 2 for why I discourage people from eating there and from working there is because the restaurant is extremely unhygienic. I do want to preface this portion of the video by telling you all that I called the health department. I did. We already discussed earlier, I am a snitch, okay? So I did call the health department 3 times and I reported the things that I'm about to share with you. But the place is still open and jumping, y'all. It is open and jumping. So let's get into it. Let's start with the mice. There were mice in that restaurant. After the front checkers would check all our sections and everything, the manager of the night would walk through the entire restaurant. And when I tell you, the manager would literally not come to certain parts of the restaurant because there were consistently mice in those areas. One night I was sweeping my section, the food particles and all that, when I came to pull it back with my sweeping motion from outside of the booth so I could sweep it up into the dustpan, out popped a sticky pad with a dead mouse on it. The way I screamed, y'all, the way I screamed. Another time I returned to my table. Guess she was alone. She was eating alone. I returned to the table and she was gone. Sister was gone. And there was a busboy standing nearby. I was like, do you know I don't know where my guest is. And he told me that she ran away, that she ran to the lobby, and I looked over and she was in the lobby across the restaurant. And he said that she ran away because a mouse ran by her table and that the mouse actually brushed up against his foot in the process too. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing because it's really gross, but I don't even know how many times during the year that I worked there that I literally said out loud, like, if you don't laugh, you will cry, because what is this madness? Like, ew. Another night, it was like the end of the night and my coworker started screaming, like really screaming, and it scared me, oh my goodness. And I turned over to her and I saw a mouse running across the floor, gone in an instant. They are very fast little creatures. And then probably my personally most disgusting experience that I experienced while I worked there when it came to a mouse was one day when I was on glasses. So I was, moving the glass racks and making sure that there were new clean glasses in there. Went to go lift up a glass rack and it only had a couple more glasses in it. So I was gonna move it and add more glasses to it. A mouse ran through one of the little openings of the glass rack, like where you put the glasses, so there's got holes all in it because that's where the glasses go. A mouse literally ran through one of the cup openings into another cup opening. the way I screamed and dropped the rack, and like everybody turned and looked at me, and I was like, and so thankfully there was only a couple of cups left in the rack, because if I would have dropped it and there would have been a bunch of cups, that could have been really bad. They could have all like broken, or somebody could have got hurt, but thankfully there was only a few cups in there. But anyways, I dropped it and the mouse scurried away, never to be seen again. That is where glasses go, where people drink. Some people, I mean, if nothing else, when you go out to eat, because this could be happening, this is happening in restaurants all over, you guys. You literally never know. Unless you're back there, you do not know what is going on behind that kitchen, or like under your feet, like unless you work there, unless you work here, or somebody who works there tells you, you do not know. So use a straw. Always use a straw, because the glasses were in there. People drink from those glasses and touch them, and it was so disgusting. Now we're gonna talk about the roaches. God is my witness, these stories are true. So one of my shifts, I saw this like baby looking roach thing, and I saw it on a plate of food that was about to be served. I saw it weaving through the food, and the server shooed it off and served the plate to the guests. Basically, the rule is, as long as something is caught before it goes out the kitchen, then it's likely that it's going to be served to the guest. This is an unspoken rule, but like pretty much. A lot of the time there were little roaches crawling around the kitchen, or on the POSs, and just on the counters. If you lift up something, there might be a little baby roach there. I never saw like the big full-size roaches, but they were like the little baby ones or whatever, but it's still disgusting. Now let's talk about hair. Yeah, hair in the food. You know, sometimes when you go out to eat, you find hair in the food. Like I said, if it's found, if it's caught before it leaves the kitchen, or if it's caught before it reaches the table, then the food is going to be served whether there was a hair in it or not. So if a server is about to go out and they see a hair from somebody who worked in the kitchen, they're just going to take off that hair. They're just going to remove the hair from the plate, and they're going to serve it to the guests, and the guests will never know. I'm not saying that this stuff is right, but this is literally how it was. So also, this is a very random one, but a very random thing that actually has to do with managers, and I don't know if it was witchcraft. I don't know what was happening, but I feel like I had to put it in the hair section. One night, one of the managers, actually the manager who punished us by taking away our break on the 12-hour shift, she decided to give haircuts to as many employees as possible. No, she didn't just go around snipping people's hair. She would get their consent. She was going around asking servers and bussers if she could cut off a little bit of their hair, and then she would put the hair inside of the little plastic containers that we used for condiments that we would get for the guests. She would write the person's name, you know, who the hair belonged to. She would write their name on the plastic cup, and then she stuck them in a line all above the salad area. She had like 20 takers, like 20 servers and bussers who agreed to have her snip off their hair and put it in a cup and then place it on top of the salad area of a restaurant. I had no words that I secretly took a picture of this one, because again, I mean, this is something that, like, I don't know who could make up something like this. What would possess a manager in a kitchen to want to cut off her employee's hair and put it in containers and then place it on right above where the salads were and the condiments were underneath that?
That's suspicious. That's weird.
My next question is, why were there so many takers? I mean, she didn't even dare open her mouth to ask me. What? Like, what? And believe it or not, it was servers and bussers of all races. I was flabbergasted. With when some of the sisters let her cut off their hair and put it in the containers. Hello, am I dreaming? And my next question was, what did she do with the cups of hair after that? That's why I mentioned the witchcraft thing. Look, because that's just, I mean, I know that's just weird. That's just so weird. Why are you trying, what are you going to do with that hair? Or like, what did she do with that? I'm sorry. I don't want to just accuse someone of being a part of some dark stuff because she took people's hair, but I don't know what she did with it afterwards. She could have thrown it away. She could have taken it home. The world will never know. Now we're going to expose fingers in the food and on utensils. So literally all the time, I would witness both servers and managers using their fingers to do stuff that should not have been done. Here and there, I'd see both servers and managers take off a cheesy fry from an appetizer that was about to go out. I'd see servers removing items that they didn't want. So for instance, if they needed a salad for their guests, if the salad ended up coming out wrong, instead of asking for a new salad or even getting a glove to try and remove an unwanted item, they just use their fingers and pick it off, and ultimately their fingers would touch the salad greens. The only time that we were required to wear gloves was if we were polishing or rolling silverware in front of guests. So like if a guest could see us, if we were polishing or rolling our silverware in our section at the end of the night, or rolling silverware and we were standing in the kitchen, but we were like at a counter and the guests could see into the kitchen. If they could see us while we were rolling silverware, we were supposed to be wearing gloves. Only if they could see us. Most servers rolled their silverware in the back of the kitchen. So you best believe like nobody wore gloves when they rolled silverware. Most of the time there were raw fingers just grabbing the tops of forks, knives, and spoons. Remember how I said when we did our silverware, we had to place it upright? So like the part of the fork that goes in your mouth, we had to stick it in the silverware rack facing upright after we would polish it. And so since people are not wearing gloves, they're just touching the tops of the forks that's gonna go into somebody's mouth. I'm gonna be completely honest. Either I try to wear gloves, but if I didn't wear the gloves, I would not touch the part of the fork that the guest puts in their mouth. I would grab the handle. I wouldn't want someone touching with their raw fingers, their bare fingers, the part of the fork that goes in my mouth, and the spoon as well. So I just didn't do that for other people, but so many servers did. Actually, I specifically remember one time I was wearing gloves to clean, and my coworker looked at me puzzled like, "Girl, why are you wearing gloves?" And then she started chuckling. I was like, What are you chuckling for? We should be wearing gloves when we clean. I always wore gloves when I cleaned my section. The spoons were some of the dirtiest utensils in the restaurant. Okay, I'm just going through. I literally have so many notes here, you guys. So much to expose. The spoons were the dirtiest, okay? Many of them were not actually clean. People would literally pick off the crud that they saw on a spoon, and sometimes literally with their fingers or their nail, they'd pick off what was left over from the spoon and take it right out to a guest. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Spoons are needed when a guest orders mac and cheese or chili or desserts, like the guest needs a spoon. Don't trust the spoons. Bring your own spoon or bring some sort of disinfectant to disinfect your silverware when you go out, you guys. Also, lemons. If you haven't heard about lemons, let me tell you the tea about lemons. Don't order them. Don't request a lemon. Do not request a lemon when you go out to eat. A lemon or a lime. It's nasty. It's nasty. Server is 99.9% of the time, they're just grabbing the lemon with their bare hands that have touched who knows what, and they're putting it on the side of your drink, or sometimes they just drop it right in your drink, and then guests just go ahead and just drink it, like when the server's fingers all over that lemon. I learned at the first restaurant that I worked at to never order lemons when you go out. The glasses were disgusting. The glass cups where people would drink out of. So one night I remember the dishwasher, they didn't reset the water or change the water. So when I tell you that the glasses that came out all night were absolutely disgusting, every time we needed a new drink for our guest, we had to rinse a cup out, a glass cup, we had to rinse it with cold water at the beverage station just so that we could get it to look halfway decent before bringing it to the guests. Next, not a drop of sanitized water or actual chemicals were used by most servers ever. No sandy water in sight. On site. Okay, I shouldn't say that. They had a sanitized water station at the dishwashing area, and those dishwasher ladies knew how to use it, and they used it when they washed the dishes. But when I tell you that the servers were never ever trained, never ever showed, never instructed, never encouraged to use any sort of chemical or sanitized water to clean any of the million things that we were supposed to clean. So almost no server used sanitized water for anything. So servers would simply use hot water to clean everything, and sometimes not even hot water. Sometimes servers would just use a damp, cold rag to wipe down everything. And I mean everything. So remember when I explained earlier about how you clean your section at the end of the night, your tables where your guests sit? You need to wipe down the tables in your section. You need to wipe down the booths and the chairs and the menus and the alcohol menu. Everything on the table, basically, you need to wipe down. So we're supposed to wipe down the outsides of bottles. Remember how I said we're supposed to wipe down the outsides of the bottle and the insides of the condiment bottles? We would unscrew the cap of the steak sauce, and we use that rag and we'd stick it inside the bottle that has the remainder sauce, stick it inside the bottle, and we would use the rag to clean to wipe the extra sauce inside the lid. The checkers at the end of the night, if the checker was very thorough, they would actually check those bottles and make sure that you did that. But some of them didn't check, and I preferred the servers who did not check, because it's absolutely so unsanitary to use a dirty rag to stick inside of the condiment bottles that the guests use. I don't understand how people didn't notice these little things. The silverware with the napkins on the that we put them on the benches. We put them on the benches where people's butts sat, and now servers are using dirty rags every single night to clean inside of condiment containers that guests pour on their food with no sanitized water. It's literally just hot water, lukewarm water, whatever they have, but not sanitized water. I personally I would not clean it with dirty rags, could not do it. I would get clean, fresh, new napkins in order to wipe off excess condiments and lids. It was just so disgusting to me. Those same rags were used to wipe down the menus, if they were wiped down at all. I remember this one server veteran who worked there for many years. She came up to me and was like, "You're one of the good ones. You actually wipe the menus." I was like, "What do you mean I actually wipe the menus?" We're supposed to wipe the menus for the beverage stations, you know, where your drinks come out of, you know, and the fountain, the soda fountain. The nozzles were removed every night, right? They were removed and they were dipped in water, not sanitized water. No chemicals were used to clean the nozzles of the beverage stations. Same for the tea urns and their nozzles. They were rinsed with hot water and placed right back at the beverage stations on a cloth napkin to air dry overnight, and in the morning, they would be reapplied to the tea urn. I never once saw these things be washed at the beverage station with soap or chemicals or anything like that. Never saw it one time in the entire year plus that I worked there. And I mean, literally never. Again, if we don't laugh, we'll cry. It's just insanity. I do not laugh because the stuff is funny. I laugh because it's just insane to me. All right, a quick story about the tea urns and unsanitariness. This is a good one. So one time during the year that I worked there was a water outage in my city for like a week. Our city and surrounding cities, I don't know if a pipe broke somewhere or what happened, but we legitimately couldn't use water that came from our sinks, from our showers, you know, in our homes. We couldn't use the water. It was like contaminated or something for nearly a week. Many local restaurants closed down during this time. Did Yeehaw Steakhouse close down? You already know the answer to that. And surprisingly, or unsurprisingly enough, the guests kept on coming. The guests came out to eat, even though we had no water. So since the water was out, we did not have fountain drinks, water or ice for the ice machine. Busters were sent to the grocery stores to get ice, and then we used cans. I actually have a picture of this, and there was a 2-can limit, so guests could order one of the soda cans that we had, and they could get up to 2. So since there was no water, we couldn't make tea, right? Since we couldn't make tea, one would think that the tea urns would just be sitting untouched on the beverage station all night because we couldn't use it, right?
Well, think again!
Management had the extremely sanitary idea to not let the tea urns sit there for the night. They decided to place the tea urns in the bathrooms. The bathrooms, I kid you not. They placed the tea urns in the bathroom sinks and put boiled water inside of them. So that way, after the guests finished using their bathroom and doing their business, they would go to the sinks and they would wash their hands using the tea urns. You know, since the water wasn't actually flowing from the sinks, they could get water to flow from the tea urn, you know, where the tea usually comes out, and they could wash their hands that way. After leaving the bathroom stall, people would come to the sinks, flip the tea urn handle, and the boiled water would flow out, and they would wash their hands that way. So that night, my back work was not the beverage stations, so I actually do not know if the tea urns were thoroughly washed after that. I'd like to hope that they were cleaned very well after that night, but whether they were or whether they weren't, it's just a disgusting thought if you really think about it. People's dirty hands from the restroom using the same tea urn handles that we use to serve guests sweet tea and unsweet tea every single day. All right, so my final straw. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving. My family traveled out of state that day in order to attend a post-Thanksgiving family reunion with extended family and things, but I didn't accompany them because I was scheduled to serve that night at Yeehaw Steakhouse. Side note, many times, if you requested to have time off, it was rejected. I remember this one time, I requested off over a month ahead of time. And not only did they schedule me anyways, they scheduled me as a double shift, so like a 12-hour shift. And I realized that it wasn't even until after the schedule was made that I received the notification that my request was denied. So this means that the schedule maker did not even open my request until after she made the schedule. So she rejected it without even reading it, without even opening it. Also, it was very difficult to find someone to work a shift for you. You'd often have to pay another server at least $50 in order to take your shift. Actually, the most I heard, there was a server who made people pay, she had a fee of $100, but she would take somebody else's shift for them. If someone was in a pickle and really needed someone to work for them, she would accept no less than $100 to work the shift for them. And yeah, I knew this one guy who paid it several times so that he wouldn't have to work. $100. Yeah, so back to my final straw. So when I arrived at the restaurant on that Saturday after Thanksgiving, I walked into the lobby and did what I always do. I went to the host stand and I looked at the floor plan to find where my section was. I was looking and my name was not anywhere to be found. My name was not there with any tables next to it. So then I looked at the bottom of the sheet where I finally saw my name. Next to it, there were no table numbers. Only one word was there: silverware. I had been scheduled to roll silverware all night, again, on a Saturday night. I thought to myself, there is no way that I'm on the bottom of the ranking chart this week. There's no way. So I went to look at the ranking chart. Of the 45-ish servers that were on the ranking chart, I was like number 20, okay? In the middle, even like above being in the middle. Not even close to the bottom 5, y'all. So I found the managers. They were standing at one of the POSs. I waited for them to have a break in their conversation because I learned to never interrupt their conversations. Even if I could hear that they were not work related at all, I learned to just wait for a break. Just waited, for one to like turn their glaze at me and be like, do you need something? In their nasty tone. So I waited for them to finish talking. I waited for a break in their conversation. And I asked them why I wasn't serving that night and why I was scheduled to roll silverware tonight. One of the managers said, "You must be on the bottom of the ranking chart. It is what it is." Literally what she said. I said, "But I'm not at the bottom." But I'm not at the bottom. I'm in the middle of the chart. I'm in the middle. And she said, "I don't know how that happened, but maybe you can find someone to switch with you so you can serve and they can roll silverware." So, and then she said, "But nobody's going home." So she was like, "You could try and find another server to switch with you. Try and convince someone to give you their spot on the floor and then they can roll silverware all night." So I went back to the kitchen and I knocked on the door of the general manager. Now remember, the general manager is not someone that we servers really interacted with that much. So I immediately started explaining what had happened and he told me to give him a second. So I left, I went back to the floor and I just stood like near the POSs, and some of my coworkers were coming up to me and asking me like, "Are you on the floor tonight?" And I told them I was scheduled to roll silverware, even though I wasn't at the bottom of the ranking chart. And I literally told several of them, the ones that I was like, cool with and things, I told several of them that if I had to roll silverware that night, I wouldn't do it and I would quit and walk out for good. So, and I shook hands with some of them. I gave hugs to some of them. I was just like, "It's been a pleasure working with you. Like, it's genuinely been a pleasure. I got your phone number. Like, yeah, we can be friends after this, but I'm over it." I'm over it because like, what? The thing also too is like, even if this was a mistake, like, I know honest mistakes happen. A mistake like that would have never happened to a favorite. Do you know what I mean? I was not a favorite, if you can't tell. Anyway, so I was told that the general manager requested that I meet him in his office, and he asked me to explain what happened. So I actually started to get a little emotional because actually a lot of these things that I told you about in this video kind of started flooding back to me, especially about the managers and how they have spoken to me with such disrespect over the year that I worked there. And it kind of just all started coming out and I got emotional. I wasn't bawling, but like the little tears streaming down my face. And I brought up several of the points that I touched upon on this video. And I shared that this was kind of my last straw at this point when it comes to working here. I was like, I have a full-time job. Like, I have another job. I work Monday to Friday at my main job. And I don't need this disrespect at my part-time job that I'm working like 25 hours a week.
I do not need this, okay? My man has 2 jobs.
And this is when he said, and I quote, "You are not the first server to tell me that the managers have been disrespectful to you. I hope that you won't quit, but I'd understand why." He literally said that to me in our meeting. He attempted to rectify this particular situation and said that he would change the floor plan and he would remove another server who was lower than me on the chart. He would remove them and I would take their tables. I was hesitant about this, but he reassured me that he's the big boss. He can do as he pleases. I did appreciate his offer. I did, honestly, but I just couldn't help but think about how the dinner shift had already been going on for 35, almost 40 minutes at that point. And I couldn't help but think about the server whose tables I would be taking. I couldn't help but wonder if that server needed the money more than I did. If I took their spot, I took over their tables, they would likely lose out on several $100s that they really might have needed that night, because this job was not my bread and butter. But many of these servers had families and they had children. They heavily relied on the money from these serving shifts, you know, a lot of times in order to pay their rent. I could never in good conscience take away someone's money from them like that. Somebody, like, I don't know their situation, do you know what I mean? I told him I wasn't interested in taking someone else's section, but I also told him that I was not going to stay and roll silverware and that I had had enough of the disrespect here. I was over it. And he actually said that he would give me the night to think about it. So, because I thought that if I just refused to stay in roll silverware that I was going to be fired on the spot. But he really heard out all the concerns that I shared with him, and he said that I could have the night to think about it and to either call him in the morning to tell him that I was quitting or to just show up for my shift the next day. So, you know, that way he knew that I wasn't quitting. That night I thought and I prayed about it, and I prayed about returning the next day, and I felt no peace. I felt no peace in my spirit about returning to that place. I sent a message to the general manager the next morning, and I thanked him for hearing me out the night before. I thanked him for giving me the time to think. And in the message, I brought up some of the points that I discussed in this video, and I told him that I would be resigning effective immediately. He actually sent me a very nice message back, and I will actually include that here. I thought it was a very nice message that he sent, but I just felt no peace about going back, and I was just over it. I was fortunate enough that I was able to stand 10 toes in what I believe and refuse to tolerate the disrespect anymore. And again, I'm going to emphasize that I was very fortunate that I was able to just walk out and not deal with their disrespect anymore. So I think I will conclude this deep dive by sharing an Indeed post that I found from another former employee. And I literally could have written this myself. Like, I pretty much agree with everything that they said. It says, management doesn't look at you as a human. Instead, they focus on your upsells, and you are just another number. If you don't upsell enough, they will put you in a 2-table section, write you up, or take your shifts. A few managers take joy out of you losing out on money and doesn't think twice about it. They're all fairly new. They don't communicate. Coworkers are awesome and are the only thing that makes this job tolerable. You can also make really good money when it's busy, but when it's slow, you will still have 20+ servers on, and they don't cut early enough for anyone to make anything. Pros, coworkers are awesome. True. I'm telling you, my coworkers held it down. I got along really well with a lot of my coworkers. There are so many great people that worked at my restaurant as servers, bussers, and the guys in the kitchen. Of course, I really came to work for the money, but a lot of my coworkers made it so much more bearable and sometimes even enjoyable. And I will be forever grateful for them. They really helped me get through some pretty miserable shifts during my year and 29 days there. I'm very curious to see if my experience is common in the food service industry. Also, whether you have worked at a restaurant or not, I genuinely would love to hear your thoughts, so please drop a comment in the box below. Also, if I do receive any questions about where exactly this location was, I completely understand why you're asking that question, but for privacy's sake, for myself and also for my coworkers that still work there, I do want to keep the location of the restaurant private for safety reasons. So yeah, but any other question or comment or anything, I would love to see down in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I greatly appreciate you. I hope that God blesses you merrily in this new year, you and your loved ones and your children and your children's children. All right, thank you again. Bye.